President Santos, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So you see what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening around the world, but what's happening on your continent. Latin America seems to be, erupting in protests all over. The most severe are in Chile. There are even some in Colombia, but in Chile we've seen quite violent ones with up to 20 people who've been killed. First and foremost, what do you make of this? Why on your continent is this happening now?
And in Ecuador and in Haiti and all around.
Bolivia. And look, we've got a map which shows all of these various different locations.
I think this is a combination of different factors. First of all, democracy, freedom is one factor. Now people feel more empowered to protest. Second, inequality. That is, Latin America is the most unequal of all continents, and people are really feeling that. A third factor is progress. For example, in Chile, this is not a protest of the lower classes, it's the middle class that is going out. And what is happening all around Latin America is that we have been very successful in bringing a lot of people out of poverty, out of what the economists call the poverty trap. When you get somebody out of the poverty trap, their expectations increase geometrically.
But let's just dig down into that.
But
because
there's two other factors, inequality and corruption.
Okay.
Corruption is one of those words today that everybody is mad about, and people are also protesting.
So would you say that's the heart of it? Because analysts are trying to figure out whether there's a common thread to all these people power movements or people protest movements in the streets from Latin America all the way to Hong Kong in Asia, obviously. Do you think corruption is it?
I would say in certain areas, yes. But there is something that the economists call the demonstration effect. When people see that in Hong Kong, people can go and out to the street and be even violent, and a regime that is quite drastic, like the Chinese, allows that, then people feel if you can do it in Hong Kong, we can do it here. So there is a combination of different factors.
So how do you feel then when it wasn't the Chinese tanks who came into Hong Kong, but it was President Piñera's tanks in Chile that came into Chile, and there are at least nearly a couple of dozen people dead? Is that an overreaction?
I think there was an overreaction. Chile needs, and many Latin American countries, need a more ample dialogue. People feel that they are not participating in the wealth that has been created and not participating in the basic and fundamental decisions. And we need to open up our democracies, and because the elections are not sufficient anymore. You need to make people feel that they are empowered in other aspects.
Chile, it's been out of military dictatorship for 3 decades. It is one of the richest countries in Latin America. Although, as you say, it has also the biggest inequality division there. And this was a hike which amounted to 30 pesos of a subway fare ticket. And the government quickly stepped back and rescinded that, but they're still on the streets. It is reported that the president himself, who's been in office for many years, is a billionaire. I don't know whether that's true, but that's what... Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
He's one of the richest persons in Chile.
So is that appropriate?
Well...
I mean, doesn't that actually, from the very top, spell the problem? Or is that just inevitable, that anybody can run, and if it's the richest man in Chile, well, why not?
Well, I think that if he's very rich, why not? And if he's willing to make a service to his country, why not? But of course, this also, in a way, adds to the frustration and the anger of the people.
Are you a very rich man? Were you very rich when you were president?
No, but I was rich. I am part of the upper 2 or 3% of the population, with no doubt whatsoever.
Do you think President Piñera should resign? He's already reshuffled his cabinet. As I said, he stepped back from the subway fare hike, and yet the protests are still going on.
No,
we've seen what just happened in Lebanon.
Yes,
the Prime Minister
but
resigned.
I don't think he should resign.
Why?
I think he should hear that what the people are saying, and he should sort of make a more profound change. What he has done so far is not enough. I think people are saying we need more. President Lagos was talking about a constitutional assembly to change the constitution. There is a frustration in Chile since the transition to democracy because it was controlled by Pinochet. And so
that's the military dictator.
The military dictator that Chile had for so long.
Decades, yeah. Let me just read you a few stats. As I said, and as you said, massive inequality. Despite it reduced the number of people living in poverty, you know, it dropped to 6.4% in 2017 from 30% in 2000, according to the World Bank. But half of Chilean workers earn $550 a month or less. It is one of the most unequal of the world's richest nations, according to the OECD. And this is what one of the protesters has said.
This is the discontent of the people in reality. They are years of repression. They are years of living in misery. They are years of government-imposed measures at the expense of the people. And when one goes out to the streets to demand their rights, to demand dignified life, they put us in repressive forces.
She is reflecting this frustration, this inequality that she says she sees in her country and what we see in all of Latin America. But she is neglecting the fact that millions of people have gone out of poverty, which is normal in the political life. You don't see the history, you see the future.
So what happens when people start to feel that democracy, and in this case, absolute free market? I mean, Chile is one of the most devoted countries in Latin America to the free market, and that's what's made people very upset as well. That, you know, their education and their health and all of that is very, very expensive for a lot of people who are used to it being much more accessible. You've seen what's happened just recently in Argentina. The elections brought back the populists, the Peronistas. You've seen, as you mentioned, in Ecuador, in Bolivia, in Venezuela, slightly different, but also in Brazil, where populists are coming to power. What does that say about democracy in your continent especially, which was so heavy in the military junta and the military dictatorships?
Well, it's happening all around the world. The combination of democracy and a very unjust capitalism. People are seeing that the market is not functioning for them. And so what we also need to rethink is our economic model. How can we make our democracy and our economic development more inclusive, that people feel they are part of the progress? What is happening is that the middle classes are not feeling that they are being benefited by the progress of the country. And also, something that has, in a way, exacerbated the frustration is that the economy, the cycle of the economy has gone down in Chile and in every country in Latin America. Colombia today is the country that is going to grow the highest this year, and we're not going to grow more than 3%. So there is also an economic effect on what is happening.
Do you think you got the economic effect right when you were president?
I think I did. The figures are there. We were one of the countries that grew the most, but we grew.
But was it just? Was it just capitalism?
By bringing in the people from poverty to the middle class, and by reducing inequality. We were the country that reduced inequality more in the last 8 years than any other country in Latin America. And that is very, very important.
Now, one of the issues that you had to deal with, and you dealt with it for many years, was a very long and detailed process of trying to end the continent's longest war, which was between your government and FARC, the Marxist rebels. It's sort of, I don't know, is it hanging in the balance, the peace process right now? The elections this weekend for local government, the first since the peace deal. How do you assess what happened?
Well, I think the results of the elections of last Sunday are a very clear signal that the country wants the peace deal to continue, wants the government to be more aggressive in implementing what had been agreed, and the peace process is going in the correct way, even though it has problems like any peace process. Making peace is much more difficult than making war. And the peace process after 50 years of war was a very difficult peace process, and we're in that phase of reconciliation, of constructing the peace. And you don't construct peace after 50 years of war from one day to another. You have to do it in long term and persevering.
So if you had a prescription for the president of Chile or of the other countries that we've spoken about, the ones where protests are happening, how would you advise them to do what you did, which was reduce inequality in Colombia?
Well, what we did was very sort of focused policies to the people we wanted to help. I even imported a formula from a professor in Oxford, Professor Amartya Sen. He won
yes. Nobel Prize winner.
Something called a multi-dimensional index to fight poverty and to have a more just economic model, and it worked. It worked very well. You can do it.
Is it still being implemented in Colombia?
It's still being implemented, and with good success.
And you said you can do it, so why aren't the others doing it?
Well, sometimes they don't have the backing from the Congress. They cannot approve the laws in Congress. For example, Piñera has a problem with his Congress. He doesn't
Chile.
have an overall majority. Many countries have that type of problems. I didn't have it because I created a coalition which allowed me to implement very drastic and audacious reforms.
So can I ask you, because this is also a feature of what's happening, it's very polarized societies, it's very sectarian societies. Are you kind of saying that in order to create an economy or a just capitalism, you actually can't do it just from one end of the spectrum? You actually need to have coalitions and the whole group on board?
Yes, polarization is the worst enemy of good government, because what it does is it sort of it stops a government from being audacious and taking even unpopular decisions. I had to deal with very unpopular decisions that are unpopular in the short run but necessary in the long run. If you don't have a big majority, you cannot do that.
So the only way to do it is to get everybody else on board?
Well, or a big majority, yes. And create a consensus that everybody, in a way, feels that they're part of the deal.
Fascinating. President Santos, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Christiana.